Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where I talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the season premiere of In the Dark, a great season premiere. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, we're picking up immediately after the season 2 finale, and I was actually not expecting Murphy, Jess, and Felix just to be outside. Because, Josh is still, rummaging through the apartment trying to... Well, first and foremost, he was looking for his phone, but he couldn't find it. Because it turns out, Murphy has it. But that's just... I would have expected him to be as far away as possible. But the thing is, he doesn't have any evidence. Yeah, he accused her of killing Neil, but he doesn't know for sure. Well, he has a feeling because she did confirm it. Yeah. So, but he doesn't have the evidence to prove it. So it's it's your word against his, and and it's all it is right now. So Jess and Felix are all about nah, let's just kind of move on. Let's just kind of live our life normally. And that's the thing about this episode. I don't know if Murphy is necessarily in the wrong, because I feel like the fact is Josh straight out accused her makes me think you should be aware. Evidence or no, the fact is that he is looking into it. He now believes that he's going to be invested in it, because he's going to be whoa, this person I care for deeply, which he definitely cared deeply for Murphy, to find out she's not only a murderer and she lied, but also lied to lying supersedes all the murder supersedes the lying, trying to say obviously I made it almost sound like the murder was bad but lying to him was worse. It's no, lying to him is bad, but now it's wait, the person you fell for is also a murderer, which is sad because Murphy didn't actually do it. She didn't actually pull the trigger. I mean, she'd take the fall for it, but it is a thing of self-preservation because they're all mixed up in this, but also Jess is the one who pulled the trigger, so that's also an angle to this whole thing. But it's like I said, I'm conflicted on whether I really blame Murphy, because the thing is, Murphy's the reason why a lot of stuff has escalated to where it's gotten, but at the same time, there have been other contributing factors, like Felix and Jess too. They've kind of played their own roles in this as well. There's been a lot of outside aspects that's not, I don't think it just falls on Murphy. That's the thing. I don't think it's all 100% on her, even though, it makes it, everyone wants to make it seem like it, but it's everyone played in a role of them getting to where they are right now. That has to be clear, but it's now it's easy just to point the finger at Murphy, but everyone contributed in their own way to get to where we are right now. So she's the one that's all about, we gotta get rid of Josh, but try and figure a way out of this, because he shows up at their work as official IRS business, going through all their files. He's right, I'm gonna get you for money laundering first, and then I'm gonna find a way to tie you to Nia Bailey's murder. So, and Felix and Jess are kind of oh, everything's okay, everything's fine, but then Murphy's no, we need to do something. I know the fact is that he's lying about the fact is that he's going blind at his job, so we could use that, but they're no, don't do that. If you do that, it's just going to egg him on, it's going to motivate him even more, which the argument could be, the thing is, he was already heavily invested, but it's maybe, I think it's a lose-lose situation. Maybe this is the worst of the options. I don't know. Because the reason why I'm weighing that, because it's well, if he still had kept his job, he would have had the entire IRS backing him, looking into them. Now he was kind of a lone wolf. Yeah, he kind of meets up with Gene, which we'll get to later on. But still, now he's still got another department's backing him, but even they're kind of getting shut down. So, but he's still got Gene, who's a good cop, who's legitimately just trying to get to the bottom of all of this as well. So who's to say if this is the worst of the options or this is actually the better of the options? Like I said, he was going to investigate them anyway. Who knows? Maybe, Murphy getting him fired might have just pushed him over the edge. You know what? Screw you, Murphy. He even says it oh, you're the worst person I've ever met, which is, yes, she has her issues, but Murphy is literally not the worst person. It's just, I made comparisons to this in the past. It's very Ozark-like when it's man, the dominoes keep falling. It's just one shenanigan leads to another terrible thing. It's just forever falling dominoes. That it's they didn't ask to be in this situation. They just found themselves, because it's all started because Murphy was just trying to find out who murdered one of her best friends. That's all there was to it, and it led to all of this. So it makes you so conflicted in that regard of right, because it's not Josh and Gene are on the right side of things. It's one of those things where it's you're kind of with the people who you side with aren't necessarily bad people to a certain extent. I mean, we're not talking Walter White here. We're talking a little bit like the Birds. Granted, they were into Marty was into like, money laundering and stuff like that. Because I think I even like I referenced Ozark too, because I think they even referenced the Ozark in they referenced Ozark in the show. I want to even say maybe it was in season 1. It might have been even last season that they referenced it. Regardless, so it's one of those things where it's like they're just the argument. It's like, oh, are they good people mixed up in a bad situation, or at how far along a bad situation are you just a good person in a bad situation till you become just simply a bad person? That's the thing. There's a lot of gray with that. It's not so black and white, but that's because we have the perspective of following the story, knowing how we got here. Josh and Gene don't have that perspective. I mean, like, their job isn't necessarily to have that perspective. It's like, you guys committed a crime, but there's complexity to it. But it's like, I think it's just an interesting, complicated thing. And I just think, I don't know. I legitimately don't know whether Murphy did the right thing trying to get him fired. I think she had the best of intentions, obviously, because it's self-preservation, but maybe she made things worse by doing that. Who knows? But Murphy ends up finding out later on, wait, there's a button missing from my jacket. We need to find it, which the others are like, no, we're not going to find the button. It's stupid. It's an insignificant button in a forest. It's like, who cares? But it's like, it matters because it's like, there might be some DNA, it's like, well, why did the button say, oh, well, Max ripped it off me because we had sex, and even Felix was like, ew, graveside? It's like, okay. But it's like, Felix is like, we already got wrapped into enough stuff. Let's just leave it here. Just forget about it. And Jess is just frustrated because like so much of her life got turned upside down because of Murphy and everything. So she doesn't want to be involved as well. So it turns into a whole thing of like, okay, so Murphy's still all about the button. She's stressing about it. Like you see that she kind of can't sleep. She's in bed just like fiddling with her coat with the missing button and everything, because she's like, and I think that's also an element of this episode. Just because you're paranoid doesn't mean they're not out to get you, so, and she was right. Josh was all about it. He even went to Sam because he was like, Sam, you might not be able to do what you want to them because I know you cared about Nia, but the fact of the matter is, you can get justice for her if you tell me. It's like, okay, this is where the bodies are buried. So, like, Sam pointed them in the right direction. So, Josh was going to get there regardless. Granted, it doesn't help that they ultimately end up giving him the ammo against him because they find the button and it's got blood on it. So, I don't think the blood's hers. I think the blood's going to... Well, I was about to say it probably is her blood. I was about to say, I don't think it's Jess's because, like, yeah... I mean, that's also the thing, too. Like, it's not even Murphy who pulled the trigger. It was, Jess, but still. Which I'm sure that's, like, rattling. Because Jess is kind of, like, at one point, you can tell, like, she's just kind of unnerved by everything. Like, I'm sure, like, oh, I'm cold and everything, but it's still probably like, nah, I'm sure that's racing through your mind. Regardless of Nia being a bad person, she was going to kill Murphy and everything. It's still a thing of, like, right, you murdered someone. Like, that's not going to easily go away. You haven't really had a lot of time to deal with that. It's just been one thing after another, after another, after another, so... Because it complicates things, because Gene was already, like, going to talk to Murphy because he brought it up to Chief, like, yo, I think Tyson and this whole thing with Dean, and it's like, don't look into that. It's like, we know that the Chief is the one who buried stuff, so it's like, okay, Gene's like, right, he sees what's what, so he goes and talks to, what's her name, Sarah Barnes about it, and she's like, oh, like, and kind of gives him the lowdown about, believing Dean being responsible for Tyson's murder, that, like, it's like, right, Murphy was in a car accident with, and she told officers, like, she had evidence that he did it, and then the Chief showed up and magically disappeared, so now Gene's, like, right, processing all of it, and so it's like, okay, so he decides to go talk to Murphy, but Murphy kind of shuts him down, which even Jess is like, thanks for not, like, because it's like, right, this could have been her opportunity to put Dean at, like, what happened to Tyson, and Jess is like, thanks for not doing that, and she's like, I'm not an idiot. I know that if I bring up this whole Tyson thing, Tyson worked with Nia, and that's just going to draw us back into that. So I get it. Like, but obviously, once again, everything started with, road to hell is paved with good intentions. She just wanted to, like, get justice for her friend, And it just all spiraled from here, And that's the sad thing is Dean's not around to, like, fall on the knife for a lot of this stuff like they are. Which, yeah, they had their part to play in it, but so did Dean. We also found out about, I was wondering about what the Chloe circumstances were going to be in the season 2 finale. We find out she's living with her uncle. That little girl is going to be messed up at, considering everything. Like, that little girl is going to get super messed up in life. I don't know if we're going to, like, turn into something where we actually catch up with her. Probably not, but it's just kind of like, it's just kind of sad to know, like, the circumstances are what they are, you know? Josh brought all, like, the evidence and everything to the chief, but the chief is like, nah, we don't want to devote resources to it. But Gene decided, like, nah, he talks to Sarah about it. It's like, he plans on getting Murphy for all this Nia stuff, and then he's going to, like, cut a deal with her to find out about, like, expose the chief for being the one who magically makes evidence disappear, that he's covering up a lot of this. The interesting thing is, Gene doesn't tell Josh that side of things. I think that could definitely be an issue in the future where it's like, wait, you're going to cut Murphy a deal? She's a murderer. It's like, no, this is just how it works. Like, the chief, we need to remove him from his position because he's covering things. In this case, like, who knows what other stuff he's covered up to. He needs to be stopped. I'm sure Josh obviously has his personal reason, vendetta against Murphy. I mean, it's like, yeah, she's a bad person in his eyes. She's the bad guy. She's the villain, so I need to take her down. But also, it's personal. So, like I said, I was paying close attention to whether or not Gene actually said, because he's like, yeah, I just want to get justice. He does, but he's not talking about how he's necessarily going to get there. Granted, this is sadly how that type of thing works. You make deals with people to get kind of another, you know, because Murphy is small fries in comparison to, like, going after the chief. He's kind of big. He's a big fish in this particular pond, in this particular case. So, but not unless those were conversations had off screen. He definitely, well, at least within the confines of the story of what we know, it doesn't seem like Gene brought that up to Josh. But so, which is interesting dynamic of, like, I think their personalities gel well together. It's like, oh, you could definitely see, like, a buddy cop, like, comedy drama about just these two. It's like, oh, you could definitely feel like they could have a show on their own, the Josh and Gene show. It wouldn't be Josh and Gene. It'd be, you know, you could definitely get some, like, Psych vibes from that, you know, kind of like a Gus and Sean type of thing. You definitely get, like, it could definitely totally be something kind of like that. So they are going to the woods to find the bodies. It's like, granted, it's like, right, we don't have all the, like, equipment to, like, find, but it's like, nah, like, you know, have a little faith, which it actually ends up working out because, well, Murphy ends up going to Max, which Max reluctantly gets involved because it's like, it's not my issue, but it's like, how can you say for sure that there's none of your DNA on that button? So he's like, fine, let's go. Obviously, Felix chews into Jess because it's like, wait, you know that you said that she was hungover, and it's like, yeah, you know Murphy drinks. So he's like, yes, she drinks, but he also brings up a psychological thing of, like, right, she gets fixated on an idea, and, like, she can't get it out of her head until she acts upon it. It's like, and it's just like, okay, it's like, use your stalker app and find out. And she's like, okay, and it just kind of has this look on her face. He's like, go ahead, is she in the woods? I promise you, I won't blame you. I'm not going to get mad. And she's like, well, she's not in the woods. It's like, well, where is she then? And it's like, she's on her way to the woods. He's like, moron. It's like, poor Felix stressing out. Like, that's the sad thing. Like, this group, like, they were kind of in this together, and they're in the process of tearing each other apart. The thing is, they need each other more so than ever, because if they don't stick together, they are boned. So, but in this episode, they're all about, like, not siding with each other, not really listening to them. So that's, once again, should they have listened to Murphy? Murphy was right to, like, hey, we need to go get that button, because, yeah, they end up finding out, oh, there was blood on it. But they inadvertently led Gene and Josh there. Gene and Josh would have been stumbling through that place because it's a large area, but because Felix and Jets were following Murphy, they led a very straight path there. It's just, once again, just that thing of just like, oh, everything that could go wrong goes wrong, because Max had hidden the car like a mile away so that, like, they could kind of get there on foot, and he was covering their tracks. Obviously, Jess and Felix weren't thinking that, you know, they didn't know. I mean, neither did Murphy know that, like, Josh and Gene were coming, but at the very least, you know, they probably would have definitely been in a different section. They would have stopped. They wouldn't have stopped where they stopped. The only reason why they did is because they found Felix's car, so it's just like, oh. And even Gene being like, oh man, this is easy. They didn't even cover their footprints. Amateurs. And when the time comes, they're all around each other, yelling at each other, and it's like, whoa, quiet. And so they hide when Gene and Josh are there, and it's like, okay, well, these footprints are in a circle, so we know where they'll find the bodies now. It's like, damn it. And Josh goes take a whiz. Oh, finds Murphy button. It's like, oh. So Murphy's concerns were right, but the argument could be everything Murphy did to try and prevent this actually just pushed it along. There were other forces at play here. Like, everything was already happening anyway. It's like, it's not like she was in the know about everything that was going on regardless, but dude. And then obviously they end up having to run. Obviously Gene and Josh, it doesn't matter because like, right, we can't arrest him without the bodies anyway, so let's start digging. And once again, it's finger pointing, blame and everything. It's like Murphy's like, you guys didn't listen to me, and Max is like, great. He's like, he made it clear, he was like, I am not going back to prison. Doesn't help the whole situation where it's like because the thing is, Max it's always been an up and down roller coaster. Like, he feels like he's always made these sacrifices for Murphy, and like she's like, we're not good for each other, and it's like, I can see that, but it's just like, he had said, like, I'm done with you. I'm not going to come crawling back, Murphy. And it's like, the fact is that he's still here. Like, he says it's about, it's like, right, it is about self-preservation, making sure you don't go back to jail, but it is also like, they're like drugs to each other. They can't quit each other no matter what. Like, Murphy is more so going from the perspective of, I have no one else to turn to. Felix and Jess aren't listening to me, so maybe you will. There's also the thing, like, Josh's memos are like, oh, he has files based on people, voice memos, and he ended up like having one about Murphy, which Murphy's like, I did the exact same thing when I lost my sight, was losing my sight, because I wanted to write down like features about certain people so I can remember them and hold on to that, like when I ended up losing my sight. So which Max is like, no, I don't care about, it's fine, Murphy, it doesn't matter, like, I'm not here about that, I don't care, I just want to like get this button so we could just disappear and never like I never have to look at you or never have to be around you again. Sadly, that doesn't work out. But Max is like, right, what's current, like where things are, they're pointing fingers at each other. He's just like, shut up, what's done is done. And you see that look on Jess's face, like she's so upset with Murphy, because like, I think she legitimately, I mean, it came up last season where she kind of blamed Murphy for a lot of stuff anyway, and it's like, making a lot of unilateral decisions without them. It's like, well, she tried to involve you in those conversations and you didn't want to be a part of it this season. So it's in this particular episode, but it's like, once again, things were already going to play out, but inadvertently they led them straight to the bodies. So it's just like, things just went super sideways. I mean, that's the point of the show. Like, things have to go wrong, because if they weren't all honky-dory, same thing for Ozark, if everything worked perfectly, we wouldn't have a story. The story is because everything goes wrong, because they are amateurs. These aren't criminal masterminds. Like, they don't have like a criminal system set in play, because they're bumbling idiots stumbling through inadvertently being criminals. So that's where things kind of are. Obviously, they bring this up to the chief, but the chief is like, oh, yeah, this case, like, you found the bodies and everything. Cool. Well, you found 2 bodies, because it's like, oh, right. God, I'm blanking on her name. Who worked at the bar. Oh, right. That's going to come to light, too, where it's like, right, you were about your brother. You were unaware about his circumstances, and now it's going to be like, yeah, we think they end up finding out, well, your brother OD, but now we know, like, well, his body was buried in a place where Murphy potentially buried Nia Bailey's body, so it's like, right, Felix was potentially part of this, so now it's going to make her go like, oh, because I forgot her name, obviously, like, so that's going to be a conversation about, like, yikes, it's like, right, they might not be responsible for killing your brother, he OD'd, but they buried his body, and now she knows, like, oh, Felix lied to me. Like, we're going to get to the point where, like, they're going to be interviewing so many people in their lives to be, like, trying to figure out, because I think even in a trailer you see them interviewing Murphy's mom and dad. Dude, it's going to be wild. But regardless, the fact is, Gene and Josh go, obviously, it's like, there is blood on that button, but, it's one's Nia, and it's like, right, there's another blood. It's like, oh, it must be Murphy. So they need a sample. They roll up at her house, and the furniture's going on. I'm like, oh, wow, this is a textbook job. Like, it's like, oh, I was like, no way they did this. So they went to someone to make them disappear. Murphy left a note and being like, sorry, I'm so sorry. Here's your phone. So I'm cute, because Murphy did say just look through it, so there was no evidence. Who knows? Maybe it was just it's probably along with, like, right, what Murphy was saying, like the notes about like what people look like as he's losing his vision, like maybe that's what's most important, or you know, there's some other personal stuff up there. Because that's why Murphy held on to it, because she wasn't sure if there was any evidence. But as Max pointed out, if there's something like saved to the cloud and stuff like that, he could easily, or his email or whatever, he could check that literally anywhere with the internet. So it's not like he necessarily needs his phone. So it probably was more so for like the personal stuff like that and remembering what people look like when he's losing his vision. But last thing we see in the episode is them all together and their IDs being taken from. It's like, right, no one's going to find you. And then, like I said, Jess laughing, going, ah, ha, ha, because, like, yeah, she's, I think, in the process of having a mental breakdown because of everything. And then we hard cut to, oh, they're doing it again. They're doing that, stringing along a mystery. Like, obviously, there was the whole, like, feeling, well, it's someone's dead body. Whose is it? We don't know. And then it gets revealed to be, who it is, what's her face's brother, but then it's like, oh, like, you know, Murphy and Phil, like, they started it off that way with, like, now we're doing the same thing where it seems like it might be Jess who's getting her head bashed against a car and someone's dragging her away. You would assume if it would be anyone, it's Sam. I couldn't tell. It didn't look like it's Sam. But to be fair, we don't know. Like, to mislead us, they might not have even shot that with, like, the actors. That could have just been, like, some extras that are there in that scene just to hide, like, who. So you probably can't even really pause and be like, oh, that looks like that's because, I mean, for one, it's in black and white, but also, like, they probably do that on purpose to kind of, like, so that if you see that, like, to try hide any did. That's what I'm curious. Like, did they film that with the actors already in mind, or did they film two scenes, one with the actual actors when it eventually gets to that point in the story at the end of at whatever point it happens in the season, or whether or not like they use extras to kind of like throw you off on who it is. It seems like it might be Jess, and like I said, I'd assume it's Sam, but she's locked up and not getting out, not unless there's something to that. But must be something else they get mixed up with the wrong people yet again, and that kind of leads to that. Who knows? But so like I said, I wasn't expecting them to like do that again this season, which is pretty a dope thing of like, all right, got to figure out this mystery as this season's progressing, and like seeing if you can kind of figure it out before it gets well revealed. I am curious too, because this is dealing with Nia and, you know, like Darnell's position in all of this. Like, eventually he's going to get questioned about it, because like Sarah had thrown his name out there as like Darnell had said that, you know, Murphy's the one that threw that out there, that like Dean's the one that killed Tyson and stuff like that. So I'm sure Gene is going to go visit, especially because it's like, right, this was your sister we were talking about, so that's going to get complicated and murky. So I'm so interested to see where this season goes. It's going to be wild with our quartet on the run, because I was trying to find the right word for it. But our quartet of heroes, bumbling criminals on the run, and what that necessarily entails. I'm really excited to see where ultimately all of this ends up taking us over the course of the season, but in particular where the next episode takes us with all of this. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.